What's the main assumption here? That before the creation of our universe, from which simple, ignorant spirits were brought into existence so that they could structure life inside of this new creation. But before this creation, there already existed what is called paradise or higher spirituality. The spirits themselves affirm this.
Hello friends of our YouTube community. My name is Rodrigo Freitas. Welcome to another video here on our channel. We're here with Jan Val Ellam himself. All in peace, Ellam.
Hello, all good. Let's reflect on life together.
Perfect. Before moving on to the questions, I'd like to remind you to leave a like on the video, subscribe to our channel, make sure your subscription is active on the channel, which YouTube sometimes removes, if possible. Also become a member on our official channel to further support our work. There are some great videos on spirituality there. And that's the subject of today's questions, okay? And here we go. I've chosen two questions that are similar. So here we go. Let me put the first one on the screen. Vicente Costa, he asks, how are spirits created, and do they come into existence independently of human life? And are there spirits of extraterrestrials? And Rafael Giovanardi sent our second question. If Yahweh created these two realities, the two universes, and he is not the God who creates spirits, why do our spirits have to live their lives in the universes created by Yahweh?
In the Book of Spirits, codified by Allan Kardec in the second half of the 19th century in France, he says that with the appearance of our universe, with the emergence of the life, as we have come to know it, this transitory life, then simple and ignorant spirits were created to structure life in all its levels, mineral, plant, animal, human. So within the scope of the spiritist understanding, what is taken as information is that with the emergence of this universe in which we live, there was this decision. There was this new creation of simple and ignorant spirits. This kind of information is precious, not for us to take it as 100% true, because we can't be certain of what we can't verify as true, what we have no way of verifying. Immanuel Kant would often affirm with remarkable authority that the human intellect is valuable for its ability to collect uncertainties, not stupid or mistaken or childish certainties. Unfortunately, religious certainties end up being childish certainties. Why is that? Because we do not truly know whether it is true, yet we accept it as truth and go on spending our lives debating it with other people who think they know other truths, and deep down it's all very ephemeral, very ridiculous. So that's the childish way of acting. The adult way is to follow Kant's advice. It is to appropriate certain information or deductions, that which the scientific method mathematically states as certainty, even if some interpretation can still be modified or updated. But these we may appropriate as being almost correct, as something demonstrated by science. And this is important, so we can be almost sure about these things. Yet that which is not demonstrated by science, that which cannot be examined, measured, or verified by us as human beings, shouldn't to be readily accepted as truth. Ah, but it was the spirits who said it, regardless of who may speak or make such a claim. But if such a claim cannot be verified, then prudence calls us to regard it not as truth, but to set it aside as an uncertainty, that one day may be taken as true. So this information given by the spirits, which Kardec reproduced very well, gives us a clue that if this is correct, this leads us to another assumption. What other assumption? That before our universe was created, from which simple ignorant spirits were created to structure and sustain the unfolding of life within this new creation. But before this creation, there already existed what is called paradise. The higher spirituality already existed. The spirits themselves affirm this, saying that there is an eternity aspect there, since this paradise would be uncreated. So, if this is also true, what can we deduce from the information coming from spiritual revelation? That there are at least two, distinct moments or even two different well springs from which what we call the spirit may arise. One that had already existed before and that is uncreated. And it's always been there. These spirits are the superior paradisiacal spirits, or going to what Hindu Aryan mythology explains, it would be spirits whose soul or atmic body resides in paradise. And here in what I call our cosmic revelation, at the dawn of these questions, we have already explained what Krishna mentioned to Arjuna in the Uttara Gita, when he talks about the septenary constitution of the human being, saying that the human being has this body and 6 more. In other words, 7 bodies. Of these 7 bodies, the first 3, the Atmic, the Buddhic, and the Manasic, these 3 kinds of bodies make up what we call spirits itself. The other 3 plus this physical body, in other words, this lower quaternary ones, is something that happens only within this creation. It arose due to this creation. But compared to what already existed before this creation, the spirit is just the atmic body, the soul, clothed by 2 other spiritual garments, the Buddhic and the Manasic bodies. Thus, this immortal triad becomes magnetically bound to this lower quaternary, and when this body is born, 3 additional ghost-like bodies arise with it, called the ethereal double, the emotional, and the lower mental body. And to these, the eternal triad becomes magnetically bound, and so it remains as the 7 bodies. From this perspective, the spirit is only the Atmic, the Buddhic, and the Manasic ones. In other words, the soul invested with 2 spiritual garments. The information from the Spiritist revelation therefore leads us to think about these 2 presuppositions. Now going to the question that was asked, or both questions asked, the being that is called, whose epithet in Hindu Aryan mythology is Prajapati, and in our books of cosmic revelation we call it Prabrajna, who fell in his own creation, was reconstructed as Yahweh or Brahma, referred to in the question. Brahma or Yahweh didn't create anything. It was the previous condition of the mind of Brahma or of the mind of Yahweh. In other words, this Prabrajna or Prajapati being is the one who created. Yahweh or Brahma is just a name or epithet given to his reconstructed self within his creation. So, Prabrajna's creation, it had a unique solution for producing spirits for it, described in the Spirits book. What has always existed, previously no one can explain, but it would be this thing of the atmic body clothed by these 2 spiritual garments. So the question is, who did it? For the group that exists there outside, they say that there is an uncreated being, not a being with personification. A personified being, a being with a mask, a character, this being he simply is. And We don't know how to distinguish this being from the movement of its consciousness. This being has no movement of consciousness. It's that unknowable God that we don't know how to refer to. However, the group of beings from inside of the chaos created by Prabrajna think they know, but they confuse this figure of an unknowable God with Yahweh or Brahma, which is very strange, because it has nothing to do with God. Whoever are inside are fallen beings, entangled in complexities and confronted with unresolved struggles, even in relation to their own conscience. So the answer that can be given also falls into that kind of perspective that we warned about at the beginning. Okay, the spirits say it was God. Whether in one situation or another, who creates from himself. For example, if we could make an analogy, it's as if we were able to take cells from our body and clone them into other beings from our body. Our body would be the source from which we would take cells. And each of these cells would become a monad. And here a being is cloned. This is just an analogy of what, from a spiritual perspective, this being who we call God would do, or has done, or would have done, or continues to do. So that's what I can offer as an answer to the questions presented. However, remember, I am not a religious person, and I do not take what I am saying to you as something to be taken as truth. I hold it as a gathering of uncertainties, yet ones that seem in many ways deeply plausible to be effectively considered reality one day, but not by me, nor by you, in other words, not by those of us who live in these times. Perhaps the spirit of the times we live in, the current zeitgeist, doesn't allow us to stamp these explanations with certainty. But the religious feeling, the religious mindset of people wants to be certain. That's why they take such issues as matters of certainty. So be it. I'm just warning you that I don't, even though I'm here talking about it, even though I may be, so to speak, presumptuously attempting to answer questions on such subjects about which we know little or nothing. I prefer to offer answers by being honest, saying, oh, religions talk about this, we all talk about it or think about it, but nobody knows much or anything yet. This still remains yet to be sorted out, perhaps by future human generations. As for us, I choose to collect uncertainties, but if you are one who leans toward certainty, because that's the only way you can put things right in your mind, so be it. But all prudence is necessary, because we know little about it. So I leave it there, another reflection here in our fractals of knowledge. I hope it is of some value to you, a warm hug, and hope to see you soon.